then if there's any support here, could you let us know? Because we're trying to figure out how to give Daphne the screen. I don't know if there's support here. There was support earlier today. Oh, looks like there's medium staff. How do I message though? Huh. Oh, awesome. Hey, Daphne, thanks. I don't know why I can't access chat. Welcome, everyone, by the way. Thank you so much for joining the session. Really great to have you here. Our speaker, Daphne, is sort of stuck in the session room, and I want to get her on the actual speaker link. If anybody knows how to do this or knows how to contact Medium support, please let me know in the question and answer section. I'd really appreciate it. I'm trying to figure it out right now as we are getting started. Daphne, can you try to log in to the link that I sent and put my email address in? Okay, I'm going to see if we can get that to work. Meanwhile, I'm going to start announcing the session. I'm going to be moderating. Hopefully, we're going to get Daphne up to be speaking. So today's this session right now is about writer culture clash, how to not over edit pieces. This is super, super important for any of you out there who are editors, international editors. Looks like we are switching on chat. I don't know if everyone got that announcement. So yes, Roy, I do know I'm live. If you are here and coming in, if you know how to contact Medium support, or if you are yourself on Medium support, please let us know. Our speaker is in the wings, and I'm trying to give her access to the stage as well. So I am the CEO of the DG Sentinel. We are a new nonprofit social media platform to provide an alternative that's good for you and good for the world. We help you uplift your voice, connect you to other superheroes who want to change the world and start movements together. You can check us out at dgsentinel.org. While I'm trying to figure out how to get Daphne on, let me introduce her. She is absolutely incredible. She's our chief editorial director who has a background in editing, writing, and global trends. She believes in the transformative power of words and understands that everyone has a valuable story to tell. And we've heard that be the theme throughout the day at Medium Day Today. Just an incredible cast of speakers lineup, and of course, the CEO's speech as well. This afternoon. An accredited journalist with global content curation and strategic communications work experience at the United Nations Environment Program, GoodNet, and Euromonitor International, among others. Daphne graduated in the Humanities and Cultural Studies before studying community journalism. She's inspired by trends, seeing more people care about sharing and protecting resources and celebrating their unique selves. Daphne is absolutely incredible and just one of the best people I've ever worked with. So I want to get her on stage. I'm going to see if I can do that. Meanwhile, if you have questions that you would like her to answer about writer culture clash, please start sharing them. And Daphne, I don't know if you can see my Slack, but if you could put my email in and try to log in on the link, let me know if that works. And again, while we're waiting for Daphne, if you can start dropping your questions about writer culture clash, editing, if you're editing minority writers or writers from another culture in the chat, hopefully we'll be able to answer all of them. All right. Cool. I am going to go ahead and start sharing my screen and hopefully... Oh, what just happened? Let's see. Did I get Daphne on? Daphne, can you get on? Did I let you on? Is that something that I did? All right, I'm going to start sharing the incredible PowerPoint that she made. Daphne says there's no sound on her end. Okay, so I'll try to figure that out while I'm also presenting. Let's see how this works. But let me share the incredible slides that she made so that we can start just sharing them and talking about them. And meanwhile, I am going to try and continue to get her on, because it's such a pity if you're not going to get to hear her speak today. So, okay. So this incredible presentation, by the way, was entirely made by Daphne. I had nothing to do with it. Oh, there. Are you there? You're on. Yes. Yes. We did it. Daphne, everyone. What a pleasure to have you here. Thank you so much for joining. Sorry about the little quirks, but over to you. I know we have a lot to cover.
I'm totally mad.
We can hear you, Daphne. Oh, can you not hear us? We can hear you.
Oh, can you hear me?
Yes. Yes.
Okay, I can't hear you at all, but okay. So, okay, so let me just move it to my screen, everyone. Oh no, I'm looking at it's over there. Okay, stop that. Okay. Okay, just one sec, please. Can you hear me okay? All right, thank you. So I can't hear anything, but very happy to be here at Medium Day, and thank you. So today we're going to have a look at writer culture clash, how not to over-edit pieces. We'll look at the challenges and rewards of encouraging. Let me hang on. Let me see. I want to. I will try and. Isvari, could you put this on slideshow so it's bigger, please?
Yes.
Yeah, perfect. Thank you. So we're going to look at the challenges and rewards of encouraging authentic cross-cultural conversations when you're editing. And we want to make sure that you aren't over-editing others' voices to sound like you. So next page, please. Okay, so in Copenhagen, Denmark, there's a really interesting library called the Human Library. And here you can check out a person instead of a book. And these are some of their bylines. They want you to unjudge someone, create a shared humanity in a safe space, and they encourage you to ask difficult questions. So in a way, when you're editing global texts, it's a bit like that. It's a meeting of cultures. Some writers even have a foot in 2 or more cultures. So here on Medium Day, which says the time for human stories is now, we'd like to share some thoughts about writer culture clash and how to look at pieces without stamping on the voices of the writers. Okay, next page, please. So just to say something about editing, editing can make a good article better, but it's a challenging thing to do. And when you're cross-cultural editing, that adds another dimension of difficulty in a way. We've seen this at our emerging startup, DG Sentinel, with our editors and submissions from anywhere and everywhere. But first, let's think a little bit about culture. So next page, please. What is culture? So most people agree that culture is a shared set of knowledge, beliefs, customs, morals, and habits, though many of us aren't aware of it. Why is that? Well, we grew up in it, and it feels normal, unless we're part of a minority, and then we feel like we're pushed into being culturally aware through being made to feel different. That's certainly been my experience growing up in the UK, born to parents not born in the UK from everywhere, one of them a refugee. So within every culture, also there are microcultures, families, religious groups, social groups, and even work cultures. All right, next page, please. I'd like to say a little bit about this guy. He's from Holland. I hope I pronounced his name correctly. Geert Hofstede. So he was a social psychologist stroke anthropologist, and he was focused on cross-cultural organizations. So he's got a 6-point model of cultural dimensions that in a way can help us understand cultural differences and what drives people from different cultures. I think it can help us adapt our editing and communication styles to work better in cross-cultural environments like ours at DG Sentinel. So if you look on the right, you can see the 6 dimensions he came up with. So, for example, individualism versus collectivism, or a long-term orientation versus short-term orientation. So it's just food for thought when you are working and editing material from all around the world. All right, that's the next page, please. Okay, so back to DG Sentinel's global editorial team. So basically, we're a team of editors from all over looking at submissions from around the world covering various topics. And I'd like to share with you that even the most experienced editors among us sometimes feel unsure how to approach stories based on lived experience, which are what we invite and what we see sent in. So we end up asking questions like these to ourselves. Is the writer oversharing or undersharing due to cultural pressure? Will the Creole words be understandable? Is the material authentic? So some of Hofstede's values chime with how we navigate the challenges. And so let's go on to some tips from us for you. The first thing I'd like to stress is it's really important to recognize the tension between clarity and authentic voice. So perhaps you should just imagine in your mind when you're editing pieces from everywhere, let the author keep as much of their own voice in as possible, but just fix grammar and content that reads unnaturally. There's a really interesting article, I think it's really interesting, from the Editor's Weekly from last March, and it's titled Editing Indigenous Writing, a Nuanced Partnership, which is very good at looking at both sides of this equation. So first of all, the part of the equation in which you think about finding the balance between revising and removing the author's agency. So I quote, as you see on the left, editors who work with Indigenous writers need to be very intentional about not taking up all the space. Sit back, give up your expert title, and use your skills to support the author in realizing their vision. Listen to their stories and their ideas for the work, and you will co-create a beautiful thing. I really like the way that's put, or this can be applied to working with writers from everywhere, not necessarily from Indigenous cultures. But on the other hand, if you leave work in a raw state, doing that never helped anybody. And that's why you need editors. So you've also got to remember that. And again, I'll quote from this book, from this article, allowing an Indigenous author's work to stay first draft level messy is not an act of allyship. It's a dereliction of duty that leads to Indigenous writing being seen as unsophisticated. So you're not doing the writer any favors if you leave it in its text in a raw state. Okay, the next page, please. So we've tried to express this kind of challenge, of balancing the two sides of editing culturally diverse material in our style guide. So we want writing about personal experiences. We want to respect the voice of people and their cultures, as we're a community media platform nurturing empathy and conversation. We respect the use of local language, style, and slang. And we also know that our international audience, not always English mother tongue, we don't want complicated words just for the sake of them, just for the sake of it. But at the same time, while we wish to remain true to the author's voice, we have to think about clarity and people being able to understand what's written, and that the piece will communicate well with a global audience too. All right, next page, please. Okay, here's an example of an actual real-world example from DG Sentinel of how we try to sharpen the message as editors. So here's a piece, a really beautiful piece. A writer from Lebanon spent 10 days showing foreign friends around her country. And why is this piece interesting? Because this is a country that we associate with conflict. It's never out of the news for all the troubles there, like lots of others. But here we have a writer with guts, in a sense, who wants to share the beautiful heritage that her country has to offer, that very seldom makes the headlines. And this is what makes it interesting. And she's talking to you in her piece like a friend. She's showing you where they went, what they felt like, saying this restaurant was bad or good, the scenery was, the view was beautiful or not. So we decided to retitle it Lebanon Staycation, because the juxtapositioning of those two words makes the meaning hit you in a stronger way. Lebanon and staycation you wouldn't often think of as going together, and a global audience hopefully will get that right away, that this is an interesting piece. It's looking at things through an interesting, more unusual prism. Okay, next slide, please. Here's another tip. Don't forget to communicate freely with your writers. Now, we know that authors need the distance an editor provides. They've looked at the piece day after day, and an editor comes to the piece with experience and fresh eyes, and that's all good. But you must leave communication channels open. So we've got editing material from all over the globe, and we come into contact with culturally diverse groups of people with different values, as Hofstede talked about earlier. It's important to remember to keep channels of communication open through respectful relationships as you look to build understanding with the writer and help the piece be the best it can be. Next slide, please. Talking a little bit more about culture, be culturally savvy and be respectful. Cultural awareness helps you avoid getting trapped in myths and stereotypes. Again, quoting from the Editing Indigenous Writing book I mentioned earlier, this book, for instance, shares that while Indigenous people in Canada and the US are 60 to 80% urban and mostly Christian, contemporary books and journals depict a very different Indigenous life on repeat. So we hear that they live out of town in these, in the countryside, for instance, and an editor therefore needs to question everything. So author mistakes don't feed misconceptions. That's your responsibility as an editor as well, not just to do copy editing, but to think about the meaning of what you're working on and whether it's correct, whether, we don't want to spread inaccuracy. Also be respectful, especially for folks from underrepresented communities, and we want underrepresented communities to have a voice on DG Sentinel, these communities from everywhere. The editor-writer power imbalance can weigh down the relationship. So reframe it as empowering to both editor and writer, and that's really important, I feel. The next slide, please. The way that you can do this and be kind of culturally accurate and fair, the way that editors see this happening can differ. So I think it's very, very interesting that cultural awareness, respect, and the nuances of the writer-editor dialogue are felt important enough for there to be a whole load of agencies offering cultural editing services. Here's a quote from one of them. It's called Kevin Anderson and Associates. And their take is that cultural competence is an outlook, I'd say. So just quoting, you can read the quote here: the lack of cultural competence has led to publishers unwittingly releasing problematic and insensitive books. No librarian or retailer should have to worry that a book they're carrying is participating in the spread of damaging or inaccurate ideas about already marginalized groups. So we've got specialists out there focusing on this. But if we go more granular, if we dig down a bit, for example, here's an example from a LinkedIn piece about writing copy for audiences in different cultures and languages. Do not break up thoughts with interfering accessory information or phrases. So they're basically saying to editors, let the writer speak and don't add all these explanations or complicated, convoluted snippets of your own. Let it flow. Go to the next. Can we go to the next page, please? A last tip. Choose your images with care. Here's another real-world DG Sentinel example. So on the left, we see a picture of two young parents and their toddler. It's a cute pic, right? It's not intrusive. The toddler is confidently taking baby steps between their loving parents. But wait, the author's from Nigeria. He writes of his unsmoothly blended family, of his dad who reconnected with him through drawing. So the pictures below probably work better. And that's just what happened. We changed this nice picture for pictures more that told the story, that conveyed the meaning of the story more accurately. By the way, some of our editors felt that a new, more formal title flattened the spirit of the writer's account. So we can see the title on the left. We just kept the original, just simplifying the second half of the title. I mean, I'm talking about words there, but it's sort of on point to the talk as well, I feel. So on to the last page, please. Okay, so just to recap, editors working on texts from different cultures need to be thoughtful, culturally sensitive folks who reflect on the work they're trusted to clarify. Look at each piece through fresh eyes. And I think that maybe our team at DG Sentinel is doing something right. There's a Medium piece called How to Write About Other Cultures Respectfully by writer Ryan Roydell. And he says the trouble is the people most capable of publishing books about underrepresented cultures are the ones who least understand them. Well, we think it helps that our global team of editors looking at articles enriched by personal experience seem well placed, pun intended, to let our writers share their stories with the world. Thank you.
Thank you so much. That was such a wonderful overview of what we do, and then also just such great advice, I think, for aspiring editors and writers looking to build a truly global portfolio on their blogs or on their Medium publication. If anybody has questions they want to ask in the chat or in the questions and answers section, please drop them about how to publish culturally sensitive pieces, how to, and whether you should hire sensitivity editors and readers, things like that. While folks are doing that, I'm just going to share a little bit myself, because I think I've been on a lot of panels about like diverse writing in fiction. And I really loved what you said, because I think there's so many similarities of not talking about things you don't know about, being respectful to authentic voice, learning about people before you write about them. And if you're in doubt, working against the stereotype, right? Like if you're in doubt, don't play into the stereotype and write like, a story about Indian people whose parents aren't supporting them, and want them to be a lawyer, doctor, right? Like when in doubt, play against stereotype, because it's likelier that you have heard more about a stereotype than the reality. So I thought that example about indigenous tribes in the United States is especially astute, because I read a book yesterday actually about an indigenous children growing up after the land regrab and during the Eisenhower era. And I found it very powerful, because it was a view of tribal land and relationships that I had somehow never read or never heard, despite growing up here. So thank you so much. Very enlightening session. We have a wonderful question from Michelle Brownstein. What is the benefit of sensitivity editorial services over beta readers from those intersectionalities represented in your book or article? So Daphne, if you want to take that first. Oh, right. Daphne can't hear. Jesus, I totally forgot. Let me check the comments. Can you see this question? Okay, I'm going to answer from my perspective while I'm waiting to see if Daphne can answer that as well. But so from my perspective, I think that editorial services, like sensitivity editorial services, tend to have experience. They tend to. Oh, I think Daphne saw the question. So go ahead. You go ahead. Then I'll give you my 2 cents. Go ahead. Do you want to answer? Sorry, everyone. I think there's some audio issues. Feel free. This hasn't changed post pandemic. We're still dealing with the Zoom or Hoppin woes today. long story short, I think the main difference is that with sensitivity editorial services, they are professionals who study the entire background and entire history of the marginalized group. And so they know a lot more than somebody who's just a representative of the group, who's honestly just speaking from their own experiences. You want someone who's studied it, who can tell you more about the stereotypes, cultural traditions, and opinions of more people and not just one person. No two like brown or Black people are the same. No two people of a religious minority or cultural minority or disability or who are it's the same. And so you're really only getting their individual experiences. When you recruit someone who's a professional, they hopefully have taken that into account. So yes, Daphne's comment I think is really on point as well. And this kind of brings to what I was saying. My opinion is that a good editor is actually more important than having somebody who fits the same cultural background. If anything, it helps bring a new perspective into it, as long as, again, you're not taking away their voice, because presumably the writer is somebody who has written and come into the piece with their perspectives. A little bit different if you're talking about a writing that you're doing about a culture that isn't yours. But if you're an editor, then a good editor should be able to do a lot of that sensitive editing through research and thought. Other questions, thoughts, comments? We would love to hear them. We have 5 minutes left. Keep them coming in. I really appreciate Daphne's time being here today. Does the DG Sentinel already have a stable of in-house writers, or do you accept pitches, stories, articles from freelancers? We do not have any in-house writers. In fact, we are entirely public sourced. And our goal is really to uplift voices from around the world as we transition, as we sort of have the editorial side. We also have this social media side that we're launching, where you reserve your handle and you share stuff like any other social site. So yes, if you're interested in pitching, please do. There is a submissions form on our website, dgsentinel.org. We publish a few pieces written by our editors and a few pieces written by folks we know, but most of it comes from the slush pile and from cold submissions. So I highly recommend submitting. We're always on the lookout for good stories. I love Daphne's comments. Very, very accurate and true. Any other questions, thoughts? I have one for Daphne, but I'm not quite sure how to get it to her. Let me see if I can ping her. I don't think it's going through my messages, unfortunately, on our platform on Slack right now. Anything else I can answer for anyone? If not, I highly recommend you come to our session. This is my last session of today. I've done 5. I am exhausted. This is going to be my 5th. So the 5th one is 21 lessons to make you a global impact leader. It's, I think, in half an hour, and it is basically me sharing all the really important things I think you ought to know in 30 minutes or less. So come to that. Thank you so much for being here on Everything in the Morning. Thank you so much, Daphne, who I know can't hear me, but she was incredible. Please give her a shout out in the comments, everyone. Please put some positive comments for Daphne. It took a lot for her to be here, and I really, really appreciate it. So please, some shout outs to Daphne in the comments. She can't hear us. That would be wonderful. And thank you all so much for coming. I really appreciate it. Oh, and the website is dgsentinel.org, dgsentinel.org. I'll put it in the chat as well.
You can hit. Well, thanks for coming today. I'm glad it went smoothly despite everything. Feel free to message us if you have any questions about this topic, which is a really broad topic. And check out DG Sentinel for lots of interesting pieces from everywhere.
Thank you so much, Daphne. Take care, everyone. Thank you so much for coming. Bye.
Thank you.